Domain Lord Xiao, as for the reincarnation domain's proposal, our 9 nether domain truly finds it difficult to agree. If it is to resist an invasion from the Immortal Realm, our 9 nether domain will naturally charge forward without hesitation. But if you want to open a passage between the 2 realms and take the initiative to attack the Immortal Realm, we cannot consent. Leaving aside the enormous cost of opening and maintaining such a passage for a long period, if it links to the Immortal Realm and causes spiritual energy to pour back into our realm, would that not become a heaven-shaking disaster? Inchunquan said. Domain Lord Yi need not worry about that. As for the passage, our reincarnation domain has already prepared a complete plan. It is simply that the time is not yet ripe. If Domain Lord Yi is willing to follow the reincarnation domain's proposal, we will naturally reveal the entire plan in full. At that time, these doubts will no longer exist, Huangfu said with a slightly solemn expression. Since Domain Lord Huangfu already has a complete plan, why not present it now? Once Domain Lord Xiao and I have reviewed it and our doubts are dispelled, we can follow your reincarnation domain with peace of mind, Yin Chengquan said with a cold laugh. Opening a passage between the 2 realms is also a secret matter for our reincarnation domain. To guard against ears behind the wall, only a small number of people within our domain know about it. Therefore, before the 3 domains are united in one heart, we naturally cannot leak even the slightest bit of information, Huangfu said calmly. If the 2 of you continue arguing like this, I fear that even after another 100 years, no decision will be made. In my humble opinion, the most urgent matter for our Grey Realm should be eliminating internal divisions and uniting as one. As for how to deal with the Immortal Realm, that can be postponed for the time being. We can first agree on an agenda and discuss the matter again at the next alliance meeting, Xiaobai said with a smile. Domain Lord Zhao's words are reasonable. This method can indeed be carried out. I wonder what Domain Lord Huangfu thinks, Yin Chengquan said without much hesitation. If that is the case, then it means we are not following any side's proposal. In the end, the 3 domains will only be unified in name. In reality, will we not still be nothing more than scattered sand? Huangfu frowned slightly and said after hesitating for a moment. In the past, the various domains and tribes often had friction with one another. Although the casualties were not too great, they were still our Grey Realm tribes, and in the end it was internal consumption. But if the 3 sides agree to act as one body, then they cannot attack one another. Otherwise, they will invite joint punishment from the other 2 sides. In this way, at least internal conflict can be avoided, Xiaobai said with a smile. Although that is true, even an alliance must have an alliance leader. I know that if I were to take this position, fellow Taoist Huangfu would certainly not agree. Likewise, I would not hand this position over to the reincarnation domain. So in my view, it would be best for Domain Lord Xiao to temporarily take the role. As for whether it should be changed in the future, that can depend on the results of the next alliance meeting, Yin Chengquan said. Seeing this, Huangfu sighed inwardly. When the snipe and clam fought, Xiaobai, the fisherman, had ultimately reaped the benefit. Even so, at least this would bring them a relatively stable environment. Without the 9 nether domain causing trouble, the reincarnation domain could calmly make more arrangements. Moreover, judging from the reactions of the various tribes this time, many tribes were actually in favor of the reincarnation domain's proposal. Next, as long as the reincarnation domain made more arrangements and deeply cultivated those tribes inclined to side with them, the situation would no longer be like this when the next Grand Assembly was held. In that case, our reincarnation domain has no objection. Let it be done this way, Huangfu said with a nod. Since the 2 of you think so highly of me, I shall accept it with shame. Once the result of the next alliance meeting is settled, I will step aside and yield the position to someone more capable, Xiaobai said with a smile, making no false attempt to decline the result produced by the balance among the 3 sides. Although it was called an alliance meeting of 100 domains, since no vote was needed for the time being, the other domains did not need to participate much. The 3 people standing at the top of this alliance meeting settled everything just like that. Then next, let us decide the time for the following alliance meeting, Yin Chengquan said without further delay. Not long after, the assembly's discussions came to an end. The tribes of the Reincarnation and Black Rope domains began leaving Fallen Lake District one after another, heading in a grand procession toward the gates of Shura City. Within the long line, The San Miao tribe's carriage looked very inconspicuous. Inside the sedan compartment, Miao Xiao sat facing her father Miao Gao. "Father, do you think the disturbance in Shura City earlier was caused by those 3 people?" Miao Xiao suddenly looked at her father and asked softly. The moment her voice sounded, Miao Gao made a gesture for silence, then transmitted his voice to her. "Whether it has anything to do with them or not, do not mention anything about those 3 again. We have never met them, nor do we know of their existence. Do you understand?" Miao Xiao nodded silently when she heard this and said nothing more. She merely turned her body, lifted the curtain by the carriage window, and gazed into the distance. At the rear of the convoy, behind the railing outside a huge octagonal jeweled canopy carriage, stood a fair-skinned woman in a white dress. It was Jiao San. Her hands rested on the railing as she looked toward the soul-washing district inside Shura City, her expression somewhat strange. "Zhoujin, what is it? Is there still something you are worried about?" At this moment, Huang Fuyu walked out of the carriage and asked, "Uncle Huangfu, this alliance meeting was strange from beginning to end. What kind of change do you think occurred that could make the 9 nether tribes' attitude shift so drastically?" Jiao San asked with her elegant brows slightly knitted. "I am not sure either. In any case, it certainly was not arranged by us. But no matter what, the results brought about by those changes are ultimately good," Huang Fuyu said with a smile. "Yes. I originally thought this would be a deadly banquet, but now that things have turned out this way, all the preparations we made beforehand have instead come to nothing," Jiao San said, also smiling in relief. Inside the forbidden ground of the baleful cleansing pool, the gray-white giant fox stood proudly in midair, breathing slightly. Not far in front of the giant fox stood a transparent figure. It was precisely Yin Chengxuan's soul clone. A huge hole had been pierced through its chest, almost splitting it in 2. Its eyes were already devoid of all light and had turned dull gray. The gray-white giant fox snorted and transformed into a streak of gray-white light that shot downward, sinking into Ancestor Lu Qi's brow. The airflow stirred up by the giant fox swept across Yin Chengxuan's remnant body. That broken figure instantly collapsed, turning into specks of crystalline light that drifted away and vanished into the void. Beside Ancestor Lu Qi, Weeping Soul's face was deathly pale, and her body swayed as if she might fall at any moment. Her hands were forming incantation gestures, and even her arms were trembling. The 4 musical instruments around Ancestor Lu Qi melted once more into 4 masses of black crystal light, then shot back and merged into his body. After doing this, Weeping Soul could no longer hold on. Her body fell toward the ground. At that instant, a streak of azure light shot over and supported Weeping Soul's body. Han Li appeared beside her, his brows tightly furrowed. "Master, I am fine. I only consumed too much soul power after using the soul chanting song for such a long time," Weeping Soul said with a forced smile. However, after Han Li heard this, his brows did not loosen. Weeping Soul's condition was extremely poor. There was not the slightest trace of color on her face, and she almost seemed transparent. Her aura had also declined to an unprecedented degree. Moreover, even though she had already stopped casting the technique, her aura was still continuing to weaken, showing no sign of stopping. Han Li waved his hand, and several black pills flew from his palm into Weeping Soul's mouth. At the same time, he formed incantation seals, sending one spell after another into her body to help her refine the medicinal power. Gradually, streaks of black crystal light rose from Weeping Soul's body, but they did not have much effect. Seeing this, Han Li's expression became somewhat ugly. For a moment, he did not know how to handle Weeping Soul's condition. At that moment, Ancestor Lu Qi, who had already lost 2 lightning chains, turned his head and looked over. Light flashed between his brows, and a crystalline ripple shot out, sinking into Weeping Soul's body. A layer of crystal light immediately appeared over Weeping Soul's body and began flickering rapidly. Her deathly pale complexion instantly improved somewhat, regaining a faint trace of blood color. Her aura also immediately stabilized and no longer continued to decline. Weeping Soul seemed to recover a breath of strength. With Han Li's support, she sat down cross-legged. Wisps of black light appeared across her delicate face and soon shrouded it completely. Under the surrounding black light, streaks of black radiance also emerged over the rest of her body, and her aura quickly began to recover. Sensing Weeping Soul's condition, Han Li secretly let out a breath of relief. At the same time, his reverence toward Ancestor Lu Qi deepened. The methods of a Dao ancestor-level existence were indeed not something a mere half-step Tai cultivator like him could compare with. Congratulations, Ancestor, for slaying a powerful enemy. Your divine might is unrivaled. Husan flew to Ancestor Lu Qi's side and said excitedly, "Now is not the time to be happy. In Chengxuan's true body is probably already rushing here. Li, you have now passed through the baleful decay and formed the body of a Tai Jade immortal. The lightning in the baleful cleansing pool is no longer much of a threat to you. Hurry into the final golden lightning pool, become stained with its source aura, and then cut through the last thunder shackle chain." Ancestor Lu Qi reprimanded Husan, then turned to Han Li and said urgently. Han Li's brows moved slightly when he heard this, and he looked toward the golden lightning pool. He saw golden arcs of lightning rolling within the pool. These arcs were extremely fine, like strands of lightning thread. The golden lightning threads were exceptionally bright, almost impossible to look at directly. As they intertwined, they occasionally condensed into lightning balls, lightning rings, lightning mountains, and other forms, looking profoundly mysterious. More terrifying still, every single golden lightning thread emitted intense fluctuations of the laws of lightning. The crackling sounds they produced made one's heart tremble, causing the nearby void to quiver continuously. Han Li frowned slightly. The power of the golden lightning pool was much greater than that of the silver lightning pool. Although he had now nearly formed the body of a Tai Jade immortal, he was still not certain that he could withstand it. But just as Ancestor Lu Qi had said, In Chengxuan's divine sense avatar had been destroyed, and he could not possibly remain without reaction. No one knew when the enemy would arrive. No matter what, they had to help Ancestor Lu Qi break free as quickly as possible to ensure absolute safety. Fellow Taoist Li, the lightning power inside this golden lightning pool has almost gained sentience. You, Shi Chuankong, who had been standing silently nearby, spoke but then stopped. Do not worry, fellow Taoist Shi. Senior, I will leave it to you, Han Li said. Then, without the slightest hesitation, his figure blurred, and he leapt straight into the golden lightning pool. The moment Han Li entered the golden lightning pool, the already churning water erupted like stormy waves. A thunderous roar suddenly rose, and vast sheets of golden lightning snakes condensed into golden thunder masses, surging toward him madly from every direction. From their momentum, they clearly intended to blast Han Li directly into dust. Han Li naturally would not sit still and wait for death. The instant he entered the lightning pool, his body abruptly grew much taller. His arms and legs also became several times thicker than before, and patches of scales surfaced across his body. But in the next instant, his figure was drowned by golden lightning. In a flash, dazzling golden light illuminated the entire secret chamber until it shone like the blazing sun, making it impossible to look directly at it. Seeing this, Ancestor Lu Qi's eyes flickered slightly. He immediately began chanting incantations rapidly. A thick furry foxtail wrapped around the golden chain and pulled fiercely. The light on the golden chain suddenly brightened, and arcs of golden lightning appeared across it, drawing more than half of the golden arcs from the lightning pool toward the chain, thereby reducing the pressure on Han Li. At the same time, Ancestor Lu Qi opened his mouth and spat out a cloud-like mass of gray-white light. The moment the gray-white light left his mouth, it burst apart, turning into dozens of streaks of gray-white radiance that shot in every direction and merged into various parts of the huge hall. The patterns of the giant formation on the ground were quickly dyed gray-white, and earthworm-like lines spread out from the formation, rapidly extending outward. The stone door at the entrance was soon covered by these earthworm-like formation lines. With a rumble, it closed directly. The earthworm-like lines continued spreading and, in the blink of an eye, covered every corner of the huge hall. Threads of gray-white light emanated from these earthworm-shaped formation lines and enveloped the entire hall. The connection between the hall and the outside world seemed to be severed all at once, transforming this place into an independent space. Sumeru boundary separation. Shi Chuankong's gaze flickered. The secret technique Ancestor Lu Qi had used was a type of spatial art that completely cut off the connection between a place and the outside world, pulling it into a spatial interface. If outsiders wanted to enter, Their only option was to destroy the entire space. It was an extremely profound divine ability. Shi Chuankong gave Ancestor Lu Qi a deep look. Then his figure blurred and he flew to the side of the silver lightning pool. "Brother Shi, what are you doing?" Husan hurriedly flew over and asked when he saw this. "The baleful qi in my body has not been cleared, so naturally, I am going down to continue cleansing it," Shi Chuankong said with a grin. "You saw the power of this silver lightning pool just now. Fellow Taoist Li barely made it through after a brush with death. You should not risk your life. Wait until Ancestor has fully broken free," Husan advised with a frown. "The situation outside is changing from moment to moment, and enemies may appear at any time. We cannot delay any longer. Brother Hu, thank you for your concern, but even if I die inside today, I must enter this lightning pool." A firm light shone in Shi Chuankong's eyes. Before his voice had even fully faded, he had already leapt into the silver lightning pool. Husan opened his mouth but could not say anything. After shaking his head, he turned his gaze back to the golden lightning pool. As time passed, vast sheets of golden lightning in the pool began condensing into large lightning pearls, lightning rings and other forms, which then bombarded Han Li's position from all directions. Although Han Li's physical body had already reached the level of a Tai Jade immortal, and had become even more resilient, he still found it somewhat difficult to endure. Amid the explosive crackling of interwoven lightning arcs, the skin across his body turned blood red in the blink of an eye. Blood poured from him and countless fine wounds appeared, only to heal again rapidly at a visible speed. Han Li's eyes were tightly closed. He appeared motionless within the golden lightning pool, but the veins on his forehead bulged violently, and the muscles all over his body writhed. Clearly, he was enduring an indescribable agony. At the same time, he was circulating the great circulatory star essence art to protect his internal organs. After experiencing the previous 3 lightning pools, he had already seen through many of their mysteries. The deeper his body came into contact with the lightning power inside the pool, the faster it would become stained with the pool's aura. Time was now urgent. He had to become stained with the golden lightning pool's aura as quickly as possible, then cut through the golden chain. Before long, the golden arcs broke through the defense of his skin and invaded his body. Wherever they passed, his meridians, flesh, and blood were all injured and torn apart. The lightning law power contained within the arcs also invaded his body and spread rapidly. Han Li only felt his entire body go numb. His body was actually unable to move in the slightest, and the circulation of the immortal spiritual power inside him suddenly slipped out of his control. Faced with this shocking change, both alarm and anger surged in his heart. What alarmed him was that if he could not move or circulate his immortal spiritual power, he would be unable to leave the lightning pool. What angered him was that Ancestor Lu Qi had not warned him about such an important matter. Ancestor Lu Qi had been imprisoned here for countless years. Han Li did not believe he would be unaware of the golden lightning pool's condition. However, this was not the time to blame Ancestor Lu Qi. Han Li could no longer concern himself with becoming stained with the pool's aura. He did his utmost to mobilize the immortal spiritual power in his body, trying to resist the lightning laws. But these lightning laws were extraordinarily powerful. Wave after wave surged into his body, and the numbing sensation grew heavier and heavier. A strand of lightning law power also invaded Han Li's mind and wrapped around his soul, causing the circulation of his spiritual sense to become sluggish. The ghost soul worm inside his soul had remained completely still ever since Yinghua died, as if it had perished. Now, once it was enveloped by this lightning law power, it suddenly began struggling violently. It let out faint but shrill cries, as if it had encountered some terrifying existence. It twisted its body desperately, trying to drill deeper into his soul. But it was already too late. That strand of lightning law power had already wrapped around the ghost soul worm. Specks of golden lightning law runes seemed to be drawn to it and rapidly merged into its body. The ghost soul worm's body suddenly swelled, then burst apart with a soft pop, turning into a wisp of black qi that scattered away. Han Li's soul shook violently, and his vision went black. Fortunately, the shock was not too strong. With the power of his spiritual sense, he quickly recovered. The ghost soul worm in his soul had always been a lingering worry. Although Ingua was dead and the worm might not have been able to stir up any trouble, it was still not a good thing. Now that it had finally disappeared, Hanli could at last breathe a sigh of relief, and his gloomy mood eased slightly. However, his good mood did not last long. The power of the great circulatory star essence art that had originally protected his internal organs was quickly eroded away by the lightning law power. Surges of tyrannical lightning immediately seized the chance to invade his organs. Hanli let out a muffled groan. A streak of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. A sharp light flashed in his eyes, and he was just about to forcefully break through the lightning laws inside his body at all costs. But at that moment, the 72 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords inside his dantian suddenly trembled, and fine golden arcs appeared across their blades. The lightning laws that had invaded his dantian were immediately devoured by the 72 azure bamboo cloud swarm, swords like water being swallowed by a whale. Hanli was startled. Then joy appeared on his face. Although he did not know what was happening, the lightning laws in his dantian had disappeared, and the immortal spiritual power there had returned to his control. Hanli was just about to circulate the immortal spiritual power in his dantian, and cast a spell to separate himself from the surrounding lightning. But the 72 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords in his dantian lit up again and unexpectedly flew out on their own with a whoosh, hovering around him and circling his body. As the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords spun and danced, they rapidly devoured the lightning law power within the surrounding lightning pool, like a thirsty old ox drinking water in great gulps. Around the sword bodies, specks of golden lightning runes the size of grains of rice appeared, emitting waves of lightning law fluctuations that caused the nearby void to hum and tremble. The lightning laws inside Hanli's body rapidly decreased, and his numb body quickly recovered. Seeing this scene before him, Hanli stopped circulating his immortal spiritual power. The joy on his face deepened, and there was even a faint trace of excitement. The azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were his bonded magical treasures, and the mental connection between them was extremely close. At this moment, Hanli could clearly sense that after devouring the lightning laws from this lightning pool, the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were undergoing a transformation. They were finally beginning to advance into immortal artifacts. This set of bonded magical treasures had devoured many sword essences in the Netherfrost immortal manner, greatly increasing the spiritual power they contained. They far surpassed some immortal artifacts, and the power of a single flying sword was already enough to compare with most immortal artifacts. However, although the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were powerful, they did not contain law power. That was still a flaw. When fighting against certain ranked immortal artifacts, they would inevitably fall somewhat short. But now, it seemed that this set of flying swords was finally about to advance into immortal artifacts. Hanli suppressed the excitement in his heart and once again circulated the great circulatory star essence art to protect his body. He endured the assault of the surrounding golden lightning, while carefully observing the state of the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords. The 72 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were his bonded magical treasures. He could not allow the slightest mishap to befall them. Hussein, standing above the lightning pool, showed surprise when he saw what was happening around Hanli. Ancestor Lu Qi also looked toward Hanli, his gaze flickering slightly. The 72 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords circled rapidly around Hanli. The lightning law runes around their blades grew larger at great speed. By now, they were already the size of a thumbnail, and the lightning law power they emitted had strengthened several-fold. The flying swords also rapidly grew in size, transforming into enormous azure swords several zhang long. Like 72 sharks, they swam joyfully through the lightning pool, devouring the pool's lightning laws even faster, as if they were bottomless pits. Hanli was not surprised to see this. He knew that the law power contained within an immortal artifact was connected to the materials used to refine it, the spiritual power it contained, and the degree of nurturing it had received beforehand. If the material was too poor or the attributes were incompatible, the artifact could very likely collapse the moment law power was poured into it. The materials used for his azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were already extraordinary, and the spiritual power they contained was extremely dense. They had also been refined by the profound heaven gourd for many years, and afterward, he had continuously nurtured them inside his body with immortal spiritual power. With such a solid foundation, The amount of law power the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords could contain was naturally considerable. The reason he had not upgraded this set of flying swords into immortal artifacts before was that he had been unable to find such an enormous amount of law power, so the matter had been delayed all this time. He had not expected that misfortune would turn into fortune here, and bring him such an opportunity. Seeing that no accident had occurred with the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, and that they were smoothly devouring the law power of the lightning pool, Hanli finally relaxed. He closed his eyes and sensed the condition inside his body. The advancement of the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords into immortal artifacts was certainly a joyous matter, but the most important thing now was still to have his own body become stained with the lightning pool's aura as quickly as possible. With that thought, he closed his eyes again. Various strange lights rose from his body and condensed into phantoms of true spirits such as a true dragon, an azure luan, a 5-colored peacock, and a mountain giant ape. At this moment, these true spirit phantoms looked much clearer than before, almost as if they had become solid. Each one emitted a powerful true spirit bloodline aura. Hanli's body continued swelling and deforming, but now that his physical strength had greatly increased, the impact of the true spirit bloodline power on him was far less severe than before. Aside from these true spirit phantoms, streaks of golden lightning also surfaced over his body and slowly became brighter. Soon, these golden electric lights finally reached a limit. They linked and fused with one another, transforming into a layer of golden lightning halo that flickered continuously, as if he were wearing a golden robe of rosy light. The next moment, Hanli's eyes suddenly opened, and his body transformed into a golden shadow that shot into the sky. However, the golden lightning in the pool around him was the same as in the previous 3 lightning pools. It immediately chased after him and condensed into a huge golden electric net that wrapped around Hanli's body. This golden net was extremely dense. Countless lightning law runes clung to it, making it exceptionally tough. His body had only flown a few zhang when he was dragged back and could not advance another step. Hanli frowned. Golden light flashed over his body, and he was just about to act. At that moment, the lightning pool below suddenly surged violently. After a series of muffled thunderous rumbles, massive azure sword chi shot out from within, forming a forest and mountain of swords. Every streak of sword chi was wrapped in threads of golden lightning, and countless lightning runes leapt around it. They slashed in all directions without any pattern, easily cutting open spatial cracks wherever they passed. The golden electric net above the lightning pool bore the brunt of it. The moment it was struck by the sword chi, it was shredded apart as easily as paper and exploded into countless fragments. Although Hanli was also swept up by these sword chi, the moment they touched his body, they seemed to possess spirituality and automatically moved around him, not injuring him in the slightest. Husan, standing near the golden lightning pool, changed expression and immediately shot backward. In a flash, he retreated 100 zhang away. Drip. Drops of blood fell from Husan's arm. A rather deep wound had appeared there, and blood poured out. Although he had retreated quickly, the sword chi had erupted too suddenly, and he had still been injured. Humph! Husan snorted lightly. Specks of green light appeared over the wound on his arm, and as they flickered, the wound quickly healed and disappeared. He looked at the sword chi inside the golden lightning pool, and a trace of fear flashed through his eyes. This sword chi was incomparably sharp. It seemed capable of piercing a hole through the sky itself. Fortunately, he had been standing relatively far away and had retreated quickly. Otherwise, if he had been swept into it, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Ancestor Lu Qi looked at the endless sword chi before him and gave a slight nod. At that moment, Hanli's figure flew out from within the sword chi and landed beside the lightning pool. He flipped his hand and took out a pill, then swallowed it. Streaks of green light also appeared over the wounds on his body, wrapping around him. His injuries recovered rapidly and healed within a few breaths. The endless sword chi inside the lightning pool also quickly withdrew. In the blink of an eye, it vanished without a trace. The nearby void that had been cut open also rapidly closed and returned to normal. One flying sword after another shot out from the lightning pool. They were precisely the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords. At this moment, the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords looked almost completely different. Their entire bodies were a vivid, dripping green, almost transparent. Golden lightning-shaped patterns had appeared across the jade-like green blades, and around each sword coiled crystalline golden arcs as thick as fingers. These arcs darted and flashed rapidly around the sword bodies with crackling sounds, while specks of golden runes circled among them. The sight was startling to behold. In the blink of an eye, all 72 flying swords shot out of the lightning pool. Every sword emitted powerful sword chi fluctuations, several times stronger than before and absolutely no weaker than the ranked immortal artifacts Han Li possessed. The azure bamboo cloud swarm swords transformed into 72 golden lightning shadows, circling Han Li's body several times at high speed. Then they once again sank into his dantian and lay quietly within. Sensing the surging power contained within the 72 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords in his dantian, Han Li could not help but raise the corners of his mouth, unable to hide the joy in his heart. Fellow Taoist Li, congratulations. But have you successfully become stained with the aura of the golden lightning pool? Husan flew over, first cupping his hands in congratulations, then immediately asking. He was also a well-informed person and had instantly guessed what had happened to the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords. Brother Hu, do not worry. If I had not successfully become stained with the lightning pool's aura, I would not have come out, Han Li said with a smile. As he spoke, the layer of golden lightning halo appeared over his body. Seeing this, a trace of joy flashed through Ancestor Lu Qi's eyes, mixed with a hint of excitement. Master! Weeping Soul, who had been sitting cross-legged nearby, immediately stood and walked over when she heard Han Li's voice. Her pale complexion had recovered quite a bit, and her aura had already recovered by more than half. It was unknown what secret technique she had used to restore herself so quickly. Han Li nodded to Weeping Soul and was just about to say something. At that moment, a clear cry rang out from the silver lightning pool, and Shi Chuankong's figure shot out from within. Han Li looked over, and his expression immediately changed slightly. Shi Chuankong looked extremely wretched. It was as if a layer of flesh had been scraped from his body. The ribs in his lower abdomen were exposed, and the flesh on both arms had almost completely vanished, revealing 2 white bone arms. His entire body seemed to have shrunk by a full size. However, although he looked miserable, a layer of white jade crystal light had surfaced over his body. Clearly, he had already passed through the baleful decay. At that moment, silver arcs of lightning in the pool shot toward him and instantly wrapped around his body. His face darkened. He formed a hand seal with both hands and waved them. A dazzling mass of silver light appeared at his waist. It was the silver pipa. Shi Chuankong plucked it with his fingers, and with a humming sound, rings of silver sound waves instantly swept outward. The silver arcs wrapped around his body collapsed and vanished the moment they touched those sound waves, exploding amid rumbling sounds. Seizing the chance, he shot out. With a blur of his figure, he landed on the bank of the lightning pool, panting heavily. He could barely stand and hurriedly flipped his hand to take out several pills, which he swallowed. Although Shi Chuankong was heavily injured, his face was full of joy. No matter what, he had finally passed through the baleful decay and crossed this threshold. Black, red, green and other colored lights rose from his body. Fresh flesh rapidly grew over his wounds, and his body soon mostly recovered. Brother Shi, congratulations on passing through the baleful decay. Your trip here was not in vain, Husan said with a cupped hand salute and a smile. Thanks to your good words. It was luck, just luck, Shi Chuankong said with a hearty laugh. We can say these things after we have completely escaped. Now quickly help me cut through the golden chain. I can sense someone rapidly approaching this place. Hurry! Ancestor Lu Qi's voice suddenly sounded, extremely grave. Everyone's expression changed. They did not dare delay any longer and immediately began moving. Dark red light flashed in Han Li's hand, and the heavenly fox blood transformation saber appeared. He took a deep breath, gripped the blood transformation saber tightly with both hands, and golden light blazed from his body. The immortal spiritual power inside him surged madly out and poured into the long saber. Husan and the others flashed and instantly appeared behind Han Li. They raised their hands and pushed into the air, sending their immortal spiritual power surging into Han Li's body. A flash of golden lightning appeared beside Han Li, and Taoist Xie's figure emerged. The Immortal Origin Stones inside Taoist Xie had all been replaced with new ones, and his aura had returned to its former state. He also raised his hand and sent 2 streaks of golden light into Han Li's body. A deep hum rang out. The heavenly fox blood transformation saber shone brilliantly, even more dazzling than the previous 3 times, like a blood-red sun. The blade trembled violently with a buzzing sound, and countless blood-red saber shadows appeared, numbering in the tens of millions and filling half the giant hall. The fox head on the heavenly fox blood transformation saber lit up, and a huge blood-colored fox shadow suddenly emerged. Its eyes revealed a human-like light. Han Li's heart shook. He was extremely familiar with the light in those fox eyes. It was Shi Qinghe. The moment the blood-colored fox shadow appeared, it immediately made a pouncing motion and fell downward, merging into the blade. The countless blood-colored saber shadows nearby seemed to gather all at once and merge into the saber. The heavenly fox blood transformation saber suddenly expanded several times over, and its shape also changed drastically, transforming into a giant crescent-shaped curved blade. On the blade, one blood-red eye after another suddenly appeared. There were dozens of them, spread across every part of the heavenly fox blood transformation saber, making it look extremely strange. Han Li and the others all changed expression when they saw this. With a roar, the heavenly fox blood transformation saber trembled and released a beast-like howl. Then a thick, blood-like light erupted from the blade. Han Li, who was holding the heavenly fox blood transformation saber, bore the brunt of it. He only felt an abyssal, ocean-like baleful chi surge violently into him. His ears buzzed. His internal organs almost turned over inside him. A wave of weakness swept through his entire body, and the hand gripping the heavenly fox blood transformation saber nearly loosened. Husan and the others also showed painful expressions, but the impact on them was much lighter than on Han Li. Han Li gritted his teeth fiercely. His spiritual sense circulated wildly in his mind, barely stabilizing his thoughts. He tightened both hands around the saber hilt and was just about to swing it down. But at that moment the heavenly fox blood transformation saber actually flew out of his hands on its own. It transformed into a streak of blood light and slashed fiercely down onto the golden chain. The golden chain shook violently. The runes carved across it erupted with blazing golden light, like an exploding sun. With a thunderous roar, the entire golden lightning pool seemed to boil over. Lightning surged madly, raising vast waves of golden rosy light hundreds of zhang high. It seemed to have been provoked by something and was about to sweep out in every direction, yet it was restrained by some kind of prohibition and could not completely break free from the pool below. The rosy light formed from vast sheets of golden lightning intertwined and coiled in midair. Countless fine strands of golden light leapt and wove together, creating a terrifying momentum. The heavenly fox blood transformation saber hacked into the golden chain with great difficulty, but after cutting halfway through, it stopped and could not advance another inch. A violent wave of force erupted from where the heavenly fox blood transformation saber and the golden chain met, instantly forming white hurricanes that soared into the sky. Han Li and the others were all swept away by the hurricanes and slammed heavily into a wall. At that very moment, a sudden shocking change occurred. With a boom, the entire giant hall seemed to suffer a tremendous blow and began shaking violently. Han Li and the others all felt as if they could barely keep their footing. It has come after all. Bound to the massive cross, Patriarch Lu Qi's expression instantly darkened as he murmured to himself. At that moment, all the gray-white formation patterns around them burst into dazzling light, releasing a terrifyingly powerful restrictive force that wrapped around the entire giant hall, trying to resist the violent shaking. But the force attacking from outside was simply too astonishing. Even the restrictive power of the gray-white formation could not block it completely, and cracks immediately appeared across the walls of the hall. "There's no time. Cut the chains!" Patriarch Lu Qi shouted. His hands swiftly formed a spell seal before his chest, and gray-white light flared brilliantly from his body. Then he pointed toward the surroundings from afar. With several sharp hissing sounds, streams of gray-white light shot from his fingertips and vanished into the surrounding formation patterns in a flash. The restrictions that had been on the verge of collapse immediately eased and stabilized once more. But before Han Li and the others could steady themselves, there came a thunderous boom as an even more terrifying force descended upon the giant hall. This time the hall shook even more violently than before. The gray-white formation patterns around them trembled madly, faintly showing signs of disintegration. Patriarch Lu Qi's body shuddered, and he let out a muffled groan, as if he had been affected by the impact. Then came another deafening boom. Almost without any pause, a third terrifying strike arrived. This time the restrictions inside the hall could no longer withstand it. The gray-white formation patterns collapsed with a crash, and the stone door of the giant hall exploded apart, revealing a large opening. Two figures then shot inside like bolts of lightning. As their escape lights faded, they revealed themselves to be Yin Chengquan and Feng Qingshui. Patriarch Lu Qi gave another muffled groan. His body trembled repeatedly, and a trickle of blood ran from the corner of his mouth. Yet the expression in his eyes did not change in the slightest. He stared coldly at Yin Chengquan and Feng Qingshui. The Sumeru boundary splitting art. I did not expect there to be another existence at the same realm here. Domain Lord Yin, your 9 nether domain truly hides dragons and crouching tigers. Leaving aside that Kunhu outside, there is even a Dao ancestor here. Today has truly opened my eyes, Feng Qingshui said, his white brows twitching slightly as he took in the situation inside the hall. Enough nonsense. Do as we agreed earlier, or everything I promised before is void. Yin Chengquan snorted coldly, his tone hostile. Feng Qingshui smiled and did not get angry. Although Han Li and the others had been swept away by the storm earlier, their bodies and cultivation were all quite strong. Fortunately, they had only suffered some shock and had not been injured. But when they heard Feng Qingshui's words, their hearts jolted. 2 Dao ancestors. Han Li's heart sank sharply. Fox 3 and Shi Chuankong's expressions also turned extremely ugly in an instant. Taihun, however, showed little fear. Her hands clenched into fists as she stared coldly at Yin Chengquan. Lu Qi, so you were the one who planned all of this? You chose your timing well. But the Thunder AO chains that I personally laid down are not something these ants can break. I told you long ago that you should never dream of escaping from here for all eternity. Yin Chengquan swept a glance over Han Li and the others. His gaze paused briefly on Taihun and Fox 3 before finally landing on Patriarch Lu Qi, and he spoke with a cold laugh. Before his words had fully faded, he made his move. Raising one hand, he punched into the void. As Yin Chengquan threw out that punch, Han Li felt the surrounding space suddenly expand like a balloon. In an instant, the space inside the giant hall enlarged by 100-fold. At that moment, Yin Chengquan's body became incomparably towering, stretching from heaven to earth, as though he were a deity who controlled everything in the world. By contrast, Han Li and the others suddenly became exceedingly tiny, like a few ants. A deep sense of powerlessness rose unbidden within them. With a rumbling crash, a gray hazy giant fist, like a mountain thousands of feet tall, materialized out of thin air and smashed down toward Patriarch Lu Qi. As the giant fist descended, the surrounding void was drawn along with it and began twisting and distorting, pressing toward Patriarch Lu Qi. A vast pressure radiated from the gray giant fist and bore down on Han Li and the others. Their bodies went numb, and half of each person's body instantly lost sensation. With a muffled crack, their legs forcibly shattered the stone slabs underfoot and sank into the soil below all the way to the knees. Han Li let out a muffled groan. His face instantly turned pale, and a trace of blood ran from the corner of his mouth. Fox 3, Shi Chuankong, and Taihun were far less capable of enduring it than Han Li. All 3 spat out mouthfuls of blood, their faces turning as white as paper. The Immortal Origin Stones inside Crab Daoist had already been exhausted again. Under the pressure of this might, the remaining golden light on his body burst apart and vanished like rotten wood before a storm. He toppled over directly and lay motionless. If I had not first been wounded by those from the heavenly court back then, how could someone like you have imprisoned me? Now that I have already broken free of most of the restrictions, you can forget about sealing me again. Patriarch Lu Qi sneered. Gray-white light flashed over one of his front claws, transforming it into a hand covered in gray-white beast fur, and he reached out to grab the heavenly fox blood-transforming blade that was still chopping at the golden chain. Blood-red light immediately rose from the blade, dazzling and brilliant. In an instant it filled the entire giant hall, shining far brighter than it had when Han Li and the others wielded it. Patriarch Lu Qi swung his arm. With a tearing sound, a blood-red blade light appeared, stretching from heaven to earth. Wherever it passed, space burst apart layer by layer like fragile paper. The heavenly fox blood-transforming blade. Yin Qingquan's eyes narrowed. The immense blood-red blade light flashed and crossed several dozen feet, striking the gray giant fist. A world-shaking boom rang out. Gray and red light exploded like blazing suns, intertwining with one another. The nearby void shook violently, and the strange scene in which the space had expanded 100-fold suddenly vanished. Everything returned to normal. Countless white storms emerged, and within them appeared innumerable spatial rifts, twisting as they spread in every direction. Han Li and the others were still unable to move. They could only watch as they were swept into the raging storm around them. Spatial rifts spread toward them one after another, on the verge of tearing them apart. What are you standing there for? Don't let these people die. Capture them all. Yin Qingquan's voice suddenly rang out. Feng Qingshui's eyes flashed when he heard this. Without any visible movement, strands of water-like blue radiance bloomed from his body. The blue light did not look especially bright, yet it easily seeped into the nearby stone walls. The walls and floor on all four sides instantly became clear and blue, as if they had transformed into blue jade. The spatial rifts were enveloped by the blue light, and their speed instantly slowed by tenfold. Feng Qingshui raised a hand and flicked a finger. Blue light flashed around Han Li and the others, and a hazy blue giant palm abruptly appeared, grabbing down toward them. Before the palm had even arrived, a heaven-shaking force had already crashed down and pressed onto Han Li and the others. Their bodies were forced flat against the ground, like flies trapped in amber. Not even a single finger could move, and the immortal spiritual power inside them could not circulate in the slightest. They could only watch helplessly as the giant palm descended. Han Li stirred every ounce of strength in his body, yet he still could not move at all. A long-lost trace of fear surfaced in his heart. This was a true Dao ancestor. The gap between them could not be measured by distance. The other party was clearly not trying to take their lives at the moment. Otherwise, perhaps with a single finger, or even a single thought, he could have made all of them vanish in body and soul. Just then a cold snort sounded from nearby. The blood-red blade light suddenly surged again, and blood-colored patterns appeared across its surface, becoming twice as clear as before. With a sharp tearing sound, the gray giant fist was actually split in half by the blood blade. Then the blood-red blade light did not stop at all. Carrying a fierce momentum, it slashed madly toward Yin Qingquan's forehead. At the same time, the ground beside Han Li and the others suddenly exploded, and two thick fox tails emerged from underground. One of the tails shot skyward. Every fine hair on it stood upright, and countless gray-white runes surfaced over it before it lashed viciously against the incoming blue giant palm. There was a tremendous boom, and the nearby void trembled violently. The blue giant palm's light scattered, and its descent abruptly slowed. The other foxtail wrapped around Fox 3's body like lightning. Then both foxtails vanished back into the ground with a whoosh and disappeared. When Han Li saw this, his expression darkened. When they had first entered the golden lightning pool, and now again, Patriarch Lu Qi seemed not to have truly regarded them as his own people. But that was understandable. The other party had said before that everything from the beginning had merely been a transaction. He and Shi Chuankong were at most just two sides of a bargain. And that was only because the circumstances were special. Otherwise, with the dignity of a Dao ancestor, how could a few insignificant golden immortals have ever caught his eye? One person had been rescued right under Feng Qingshui's nose, yet his expression did not change in the slightest. He merely flipped his palm slightly. The blue giant palm shone brightly and suddenly doubled in size. Then it split into two, transforming into two identical blue giant palms. One continued grabbing down toward Han Li and the others, while the other blurred and sank into the ground. But just as the blue giant palm came within 10 feet of Han Li and the others, another change occurred. Shi Chuankong's body trembled, and a brilliant silver light burst from him. Within the silver radiance appeared a silver pipa. It was the Luozha pipa. The Luozha pipa spun rapidly, and 10,000 beams of silver light erupted from it, blocking the blue giant palm at once. At that moment the pipa sounded as if it were being plucked. It rang out with sharp, resonant notes and silver musical symbols shot out from it at high speed, vanishing into the nearby void. With a rumbling boom, the void suddenly split open, revealing a spatial passage. The passage was deep and unfathomable, and no one knew where it led. An indescribably vast suction force swept out from within, instantly enveloping Shichuankong, Han Li and the others, pulling them toward the passage. The pressure on Han Li and the others vanished at once. Their bodies and immortal spiritual power immediately returned to normal, and delight appeared on their faces. Not good. Stop them. Dead or alive. Yin Chengquan, who was clashing with Patriarch Lu Qi, suddenly shouted when he saw this. You are courting death. Feng Qingshui was clearly truly enraged as well. He formed a spell seal with both hands and swung them forcefully to either side. With a thunderous roar, the nearby void trembled violently and crackled with explosive sounds. Countless beams of almost tangible blue light pierced out from within with astonishing speed, like the celestial river breaking and floodwaters pouring forth, instantly drowning the entire void. The spatial passage was also submerged by the endless blue light around it, and suddenly froze in place. A vast and ancient force abruptly appeared around Han Li and the others, pressing down from all directions. Their figures also stopped abruptly at the entrance of the passage. No matter how the suction force inside the passage pulled at them, they hung motionless in midair, only one step away from flying inside. Get back here, all of you! Feng Qingshui roared furiously and thrust out his large hand. The void around Han Li and the others flashed, and countless blue crystal threads appeared out of thin air. They wrapped around their bodies and began dragging them outward. But at that moment, the nearby void trembled once more. Dark red light seeped out from within. Deep in the void, the phantom of a dark red wheel as large as a mountain silently appeared. 6 pitch-black circular holes were embedded in the wheel, arranged like a 6-petaled plum blossom. Black light churned inside every circular hole, forming vortices that rotated slowly. As soon as the huge wheel appeared, it spun once, and an indescribably immense force seeped out from the void. The blue crystal threads wrapped around Han Li, and the others shattered inch by inch. Their bodies regained freedom once more, and they flew toward the spatial passage along with the Luozha Pipa. But at that exact moment, Taihun's eyes suddenly rolled upward, and she fell unconscious. Countless streams of black qi shot out from every pore on her body. Within the black qi, countless human and beast faces could faintly be seen. All of them flew toward the enormous dark red wheel and disappeared into it. Taihun's aura weakened at a visible speed, and her body faintly began turning transparent. Seeing this, Han Li hurriedly reached out and embraced Taihun, then put her and Crab Taoist into the flower branch space. The moment he finished doing this, his vision went black, and he was sucked into the spatial passage. At the instant he flew into the passage, he heard Yin Chengquan's furious roar. At the same time, 2 entirely different powers of law swept toward him. Then all sounds behind him abruptly ceased, as though the spatial passage had closed. Although the 2 powers of law were cut off, a considerable amount still followed them into the spatial passage. Han Li felt his body sink as the 2 powers of law enveloped him at once. His escape speed suddenly became incredibly slow, and even the circulation of the immortal spiritual power and spiritual sense inside him became extremely stagnant. In a daze he saw the Luozha Pipa ahead releasing rings of silver light. Under the pull of the silver halos, the gray and blue powers of law bearing down on him were immediately drawn away, causing his entire body to loosen. He steadied himself and looked forward. The silver pipa was now flying suspended in front of them, but 2 streams of light, one blue and one gray, clung to its surface and coiled around it. Several strands of silver light flowed from the pipa strings like ribbons, tying themselves around the waists of Han Li and Shichuankong, and dragging them forward through the void. At that moment, Han Li felt his head swelling and his entire body aching terribly. Even so, he could clearly sense waves of incredibly powerful spatial force pressing in from all around. Even lifting an arm felt as though a mountain were pressing down on it, making it impossible to move. Shichuankong was not far away from him and appeared to be in the same state, his face full of pain. Han Li clenched his teeth. Purple light shone in his eyes as he looked deeper into the passage, but all he saw was an expanse of empty void. There seemed to be a powerful tearing force of space there, pulling the silver pipa forward and dragging the two of them along. Though his heart was full of doubts, he secretly felt fortunate. If he were still inside the cleansing baleful pool, with Lu Qi unable to protect even himself, Han Li would never have escaped from Yin Chengquan and the other Dao ancestor. But at that moment, the silver pipa in front of them began to change slightly. The gray and blue streams of light attached to it seemed to be spinning faster and faster. Not good. Han Li's heart sank as an ominous feeling rose within him. Yet in his current state, he could not make the slightest movement. Sure enough, after less than a dozen breaths, the gray and blue streams spun faster and faster. Then, after swelling and shrinking once, they exploded out of thin air. A surging wave of blue-gray light instantly rolled out in all directions like a stormy sea, intertwining with the surrounding silver light. In an instant, the passage around them was twisted by a violent force and began slowly warping and distorting. Countless silver specks of light scattered and drifted away. Twisted forces swept past Han Li's side, causing the spatial pressure around him to grow even more intense. Those forces gathered once more at the front and ultimately converged upon the silver pipa. Shi Chuankong clearly realized that something was wrong as well, but at that moment he was just like Han Li, a small boat tossed in a vast ocean. Other than passively enduring it, he could do nothing. This continued for only a dozen breaths before a faint cracking sound abruptly rang out. Immediately afterward, the silver pipa flying ahead suddenly trembled violently. It could no longer maintain its stable forward path. After its flight trajectory became chaotic, it shook fiercely and began tumbling wildly through the void. Han Li and Shi Chuankong were dragged along with it, their bodies rolling violently through the void. They felt as though heaven and earth had been overturned, and the scene before their eyes became utterly chaotic. Waves of powerful spatial force pressed down on them from all sides, and even their consciousness began to grow hazy. No one knew how long had passed before a thread of light appeared in the dim world. A streak of silver light shot out from the place where the brightness rose, revealing its true form as it turned back into a silver pipa and fell from high in the sky. Immediately afterward, two figures also flew out and plummeted downward. These two were naturally Han Li and Shi Chuankong. After the chaotic turbulence inside the spatial passage, neither of them had lost consciousness, but their spiritual sense was still somewhat dazed. Only after adjusting for a while did their vision gradually become clear again. Han Li looked ahead into the void and saw that the sky seemed gloomy. Wind roared beside his ears, and his body was actually above a range of blue-black mountains, falling rapidly toward the ground. He quickly circulated his immortal spiritual power, steadied himself and hovered in midair. Looking around, he saw Shi Chuankong not far away, also falling toward a mountain peak below. At that moment, Shi Chuankong also seemed to have just come back to his senses. After a brief flicker of confusion in his eyes, escape light flashed around him. Once he steadied himself, he flew several dozen feet in one breath and pulled the silver pipa back into his hands. Holding the luozha pipa, he examined it with deep heartache. The silver light on the instrument had dimmed considerably, and there was an obvious crack across its head, splitting the runes carved there into two halves. Han Li opened his mouth, about to call out to him, when his entire body suddenly stiffened. A series of crackling sounds like exploding beams rang out from inside him. One immortal aperture after another lit up across his body. Around him, threads of heaven and earth origin chi began emerging. At first, they drifted like goosefeather snow, but soon they connected into vast cloud-like masses and gathered beside him. Shi Chuankong also noticed the movement and turned to look over. His brows lifted, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. Fellow Taoist Li, what is this? Back in the cleansing baleful pool, I should already have reached the point of breaking through. But the Grey Realm had no heaven and earth origin chi, so I could not charge open new immortal apertures. Now that I have returned, the heaven and earth origin chi is flowing into me. I am about to break through immediately, Han Li said with a bitter smile. Shi Chuankong looked down at the mountains below and saw miasma rising everywhere, with thick white mist filling the area. His brows could not help but knit tightly. But this place, he began, only for Han Li to cut him off before he could finish. There is no longer any baleful decay blocking my body. I'm afraid I cannot suppress it anymore. There is no time to choose a place for seclusion. Brother Shi, Please help me and stand guard with fellow Taoist crab, Hanli said. As soon as he finished speaking, escape light flashed around him, and he shot down toward a valley below. Before his figure had landed, a silver door of light appeared in midair. Crab Taoist's figure emerged from it and descended with him into the valley. There was a thunderous boom. A silver lightning pillar as thick as a water vat lit up from Hanli's body and blasted into the valley, immediately setting off a series of violent rumbles that shook the entire valley. Lightning scattered in all directions, smoke and dust billowed, and the ground trembled fiercely. Amid the chaos, all kinds of roars and cries rang out. Countless tall and ferocious beasts rushed wildly out of the valley, surging like a mighty river. Flocks of birds and crows also scattered into the sky, densely covering it until they blotted out the sun. Within the valley, the area struck by lightning had reduced all plants within 100 miles to ash, creating an extremely conspicuous empty space in the dense blue-black forest. Hanli sat cross-legged in that open area. Around him, dense heaven and earth origin chi had already gathered into a spiraling white vortex, dotted with glimmers of light and appearing extremely strange. Outside that empty area, Crab Taoist held the battle sabers Thunder Severer and Skybreaker in his left and right hands. He hovered 3 feet above the ground, patrolling and guarding like a celestial war general. Shi Chuankong slowly withdrew his gaze from Hanli and Crab Taoist. He looked into the distance at the rolling mountain range, its peaks rising and falling unevenly, then at the thick, low-hanging dark clouds in the sky. His brows furrowed more deeply, and his expression became increasingly grave. Fellow Taoistly, you really do know how to pick a place. If you knew where this was? He gave a bitter laugh, then flew down and landed outside the open area. Seeing Shi Chuankong approach, Crab Taoist stopped patrolling and looked at him from afar, clear wariness in his eyes. You and I will guard the north and south sides. Be prepared. We are going to be busy soon, Shi Chuankong called out loudly. A trace of doubt flashed through Crab Taoist's eyes when he heard this. Just then, fierce and bizarre roars began coming continuously from deep inside the valley and from outside it. The entire valley floor trembled, and small stones bounced from the force of the shaking. They're here, Shi Chuankong shouted. As soon as he spoke, trees began snapping continuously in the blue-black forest deep within the valley. Towering ancient trees hundreds of feet tall broke one after another, thrown into the air before crashing down in every direction, sending splinters and fragments flying everywhere. A huge pitch-black ape, 100-foot-long green python, and a massive blue-purple spider charged out side by side from the collapsing forest, rushing straight toward Hanli. The black giant ape had blood-red eyes and no fur at all. Its skin looked like refined steel and stone, covered in angular ridges and flashing with a dark metallic luster. Its enormous arms grabbed an ancient tree and a boulder, then hurled them toward Shi Chuankong. The green python opened its huge mouth, and 5-colored poisonous smoke billowed out, sweeping over them like a tide. Mixed within the smoke were countless small green snakes and innumerable 8-legged spiders, crawling close to the ground with rustling sounds. Behind them, thick mist surged forward in waves. Inside it, huge beastly shadows rose and fell, their traces appearing and disappearing indistinctly. At the valley entrance on the other side, beasts of all sizes and strange forms rushed in. Some were covered in scales, some had bony horns on their heads, and others were wreathed in black mist. Their numbers were enormous as they charged straight toward Shi Chuankong and Crab Taoist. Any weaker beasts that tried to flee along the way were trampled or torn apart by them. For a time, shrieks and miserable cries filled the air, and the stench of blood surged violently. Fortunately, their auras aren't too strong. It looks like we haven't drawn those troublesome fellows for now. Holding them off for a while should not be a problem. The only fear is that this drags on too long, Shi Chuankong muttered as he looked at the roaring tide of savage beasts rushing toward them. After saying this, he spread his body and flew downward, waving both hands repeatedly. Streaks of light flew out, each wrapping formation plates and formation flags, which landed along the path of the charging beasts and were quickly arranged into position. Rise! Seeing the giant beasts draw near, Shi Chuankong formed a spell seal and shouted. As soon as his voice fell, a silver-white light abruptly lit up and rose from the ground, directly forming a massive spatial barrier several hundred feet wide. It stretched from one end of the valley to the other, building a silver wall of light. With a loud boom, the black giant ape was the first to arrive and slammed violently into the silver wall. The entire light wall shook fiercely, and brilliant silver light scattered from it, but the wall itself did not move at all. There was not the slightest sign of cracking. The black giant ape, whose aura was only around the early true immortal stage, flashed with fury in its eyes. It swung its thick arms and began smashing the silver wall madly. Immediately afterward, the green python and blue-purple spider also rushed over and started ramming the wall. But no matter how they struggled, the silver wall remained as stable as Mount Tai, showing no signs of being breached. Shi Chuankong let out a light breath and glanced at the silver wall. Then he simply sat cross-legged on the spot. After finally making it back, I no longer have to live by relying on Immortal Origin Stones. After saying this, he formed a spell seal with both hands and calmly closed his eyes to regulate his breath. On the other side, Crab Daoist glanced at Shi Chuankong's situation, and his heart eased slightly. He then turned back, put away the Thunder Severer battle saber, and took a gourd from his waist. He tilted the mouth of the gourd downward. After chanting softly a few times, he raised his hand and slapped the bottom of the gourd. A spiritual light vortex instantly appeared at the mouth of the gourd. Yellow light flared brightly, and dark yellow beans flew out one after another like falling rain, dropping toward the ground. Bursts of popping sounds like rain striking banana leaves rang out continuously from below. Every bean shone brightly, and the instant they landed, lightning flashed. They transformed into armored Dao soldiers roughly 10 feet tall. Each wore ancient armor engraved with lightning runes. Hundreds stood in orderly square formations, more than a dozen formations in all. Holding weapons in their hands, they marched in perfect order toward the valley entrance like the strongest military formation of Immortal Dynasty. Although the Dao soldiers were silent, the sound of their orderly steps was as shocking as thunder. As soon as they crashed into the torrent of savage beasts, they immediately cut it into more than a dozen battle groups and surrounded them. Individually, the lightning-armored Dao soldiers were slightly weaker than these beasts, but their coordination with one another was flawless. They quickly gained the upper hand and slaughtered the beasts that had rushed into the valley, making them scream miserably as flesh and limbs were torn apart. Crab Daoist hovered high in the air and looked toward the distant forest outside the valley. His brows furrowed tightly. Over there, dust and smoke were rolling, and it seemed that even more savage beasts were gathering and rushing toward this place. He stared at the sky for a while with tightly knitted brows. A trace of reminiscence flashed across his face, but he soon returned to normal and looked toward Hanli. At this moment, Hanli had his eyes tightly closed, as if he heard nothing from the outside world. Light shone brightly around him, and the heaven and earth spiritual qi gathered around him into a massive white vortex. The enormous spiritual power fluctuations reached upward to the heavens and connected with the clouds above, like a giant pillar supporting the sky in the middle of the valley. At the center of the vortex, Hanli's body was lifted by the spiritual power and floated into the high air. His apertures glittered like stars, and his skin was clear and jade-like, almost transparent. His bones and meridians were nearly visible, glowing with a faint golden radiance. Just then his eyes suddenly opened. He opened his mouth and exhaled deeply, releasing a stream of turbid black qi. The white clouds and mist churning around him immediately seemed like oil splashed with sparks and ignited with a roar. The white mist rolled violently, and countless clusters of white flame seemed to appear within it. They burned fiercely, constantly refining Hanli's body and making it even purer and more translucent. Above the white flames, the lead black dark clouds also began to shine. Multicolored light seemed to radiate from within them, creating a beautiful scene of steaming clouds and radiant mist, rich with immortal aura. In the end, what a Tai Jade immortal sought was a clear and flawless immortal body, as pure as unblemished jade. In terms of strength, it was naturally far beyond what a golden immortal could compare to. Every movement carried greater thunderous might, and spiritual sense could advance to another level. But its true foundation lay in returning spiritual power to simplicity and truth, becoming more aligned with heaven and earth, with the great Tao, and with the laws. Only then would it be easier to comprehend and contain the power of laws. It could be said that the purity of a Tai Jade immortal's physique directly affected how far one could travel in comprehending laws and cultivating the great Tao afterward. For Hanli to summon such a magnificent phenomenon of heaven and earth spiritual qi naturally had much to do with the fact that he had used 4 lightning pools earlier to cleanse away baleful decay. Shi Chuankong was drawn out of meditation by the upheaval Hanli had caused between heaven and earth, and he opened his eyes to look over. To be able to draw out such a grand spectacle, as expected of fellow Taoist Li. You always manage to do something astonishing, he sighed after a long while. After saying this, his gaze shifted toward the silver wall of light, and his brows furrowed tightly. The blue-purple spiders, large and small alike, were all using their full strength to spit out sheets of 5-colored webbing onto the wall. The web spread across it like patches of moss and wild grass, while the small green snakes and spiders climbed desperately along the webs. A furious roar rang out. The black giant ape climbed up along the huge web spat out by the largest blue-purple spider. With both arms, it vaulted over the silver wall. Drool flowed from its mouth, and its eyes flashed with bloodthirsty red light as it pounced straight toward Hanli. However, before it could descend, a silver flash swept past. Its head exploded with a bang, and a large amount of crimson blood splashed down across the ground. The death of the giant ape had no warning or deterrent effect on the other savage beasts. They continued charging toward the silver wall with reckless desperation. Deep in the valley, within the thick fog, some enormous figures gradually began to emerge clearly. Taoist friend, should I address you as fellow Taoist crab? Shi Chuankong flew into the air and called out to Crab Taoist. Crab Taoist did not answer. He merely turned to look at him expressionlessly. Judging by Brother Li's current state, he will not come out of seclusion anytime soon. More and more savage beasts in this mountain range will be drawn here by the disturbance of heaven and earth origin qi. The longer this goes on, the stronger they will become. You and I must work together if we want to protect him. So there is no need for you to be too guarded against me. I have not the slightest intention of harming Brother Li, Shi Chuankong said with a smile. Crab Taoist only nodded silently after hearing this. He did not speak, nor did he make any other movement. I just hope this doesn't turn into a losing deal, Shi Chuankong said with a helpless smile and a faint sigh. With that, he flew away and landed atop the silver wall. With a turn of his wrist, a silver mirror the size of a human head appeared in his palm. He cast a spell with one hand, and silver beams immediately shot from the mirror, striking the dense mass of green snakes and spiders climbing up the wall. Wherever the beams passed, beast bodies burst apart, and foul mucus mixed with blood. Crab Taoist withdrew his gaze and once again gripped the 2 battle sabers in both hands. Thunder cracked across the blades and lightning flashed in bursts. His figure shot straight down and plunged into the ground at the valley entrance, burrowing directly underground and disappearing. A moment later, rumbling sounds came from beneath the earth. Hundreds of lightning pillars surged upward like fountains, blasting the ground at the valley entrance until smoke and dust erupted and the terrain shattered. Countless demon beasts that had just reached the valley entrance were caught directly by these lightning fountains and were all slain. Then came a thunderous boom. A huge opening burst open in the earth, and a snow-white centipede over 100 feet long shot out from underground. After its body flew 100 feet into the air, it crashed heavily back to the ground. Every segment of its body was broken, and dark green blood flowed around it, giving off an unbearable stench. On top of its head, Crab Taoist stood with a silent expression, slowly pulling the Thunder Severer saber out of the shell on its skull. Inside the valley, the lightning-armored Dao soldiers had already cleared out all the savage beasts. Their own losses were not severe, and each square formation still maintained most of its combat strength. Under Crab Taoist's command, they began gathering at the valley entrance and built a dense defensive line there. Time passed in a flash and more than 3 months went by. Above the blue-black valley, rumbling filled the air. Lightning flashed and thunder rolled within the clouds and mist. A gigantic winged serpent was half hidden among the clouds, its entire body flickering with red light as it spat streams of black radiance in every direction. Outside the clouds and mist around it, a figure wrapped in golden lightning threads flashed repeatedly. He held 2 ancient battle sabers, lightning crisscrossing over their blades, and constantly launched surprise attacks at the serpent's body. His movements were extremely fast. Every time he appeared, he left a huge wound on the winged serpent. The serpent's dark green eyes were filled with resentment, but its body was enormous, while the figure was far too fast. It simply could not keep up. Just then lightning flashed, and the figure abruptly appeared on the winged serpent's back. The long sabers in his hands slashed out at the same time, and two enormous lightning-forged blades fell upon the roots of the serpent's wings, cutting down viciously. A blinding spray of blood shot out. The long snake's twin wings were severed cleanly by two flashes of saber light. It let out a mournful cry, its body plunging straight down and crashing into the valley below. Inside the dark green-black valley, mangled corpses of strange beasts lay everywhere the eye could see. Black blood flowed in all directions, and beside many of the enormous bodies, deep pools of blood had gathered, with the corpses of smaller beasts floating within them. The entire place looked like an Azura battlefield. The winged serpent smashed heavily into a blood pool nearly 100 zhang wide. Its body thrashed wildly, sending countless foul-smelling black splashes into the air. A streak of golden lightning followed closely behind, falling from high above and striking its skull. Only then did its body go limp and gradually collapse. Where the golden light landed, the figure of a man in Taoist robes appeared. It was Taoist Xie. With one hand, he pulled a long saber out of the serpent's body. His indifferent gaze swept the surroundings before he looked up into the sky. At both the mouth of the valley and deeper within it, two enormous mountains of corpses had already piled up, stretching so far that their ends were almost impossible to see. Because of these barriers, the number of fierce beasts constantly attacking from the ground had lessened considerably. Only a few powerful creatures, driven by pure savagery, could still climb over the corpse mountains and charge through. Inside the valley, the ground had already been flooded by vast amounts of filthy blood, forming a blood lake nearly 100 li across. Countless corpses floated on its surface, and the stench was overwhelming. Yet at the center of this lake floated a white lotus bud condensed from pure immortal spiritual power. Its petals were closed, as though it was still waiting to bloom, and Han Li's body was wrapped inside them. Even more strangely, the blood around the lotus bud seemed to have been purified by the immortal spiritual power. It remained a bright crimson color. No floating corpses drifted near it, and there was not the slightest foul odor. 10,000 zhang above the lotus bud, Shi Chuankong was drenched in blood. His clothes were stained and filthy, and he held a silver spear in his hands as he fought three massive and ferocious great demons at the same time. Taoist Xie no longer knew how many times these vicious demon beasts had launched attacks over the past several months. He only knew that the thunder-armored Dao soldiers Han Li had previously nurtured had all been used up half a month ago. The talismans and array plates on Shi Chuankong had also been completely exhausted, and even several of his magic treasures had been ruined. Most troublesome of all, beyond the valley, there were still several great demons stronger than the winged serpent lying in wait and gathering strength. They were clearly waiting until the two of them were nearly spent before launching the final attack. Taoist Xie looked at Shi Chuankong's figure, thoughts stirring in his heart. At first, he had not trusted Shi Chuankong in the slightest. Only after they had fought side by side several times and repelled enemy assaults together had his impression changed somewhat. But if this situation continued, Taoist Xie was not certain whether Shi Chuankong would still keep holding his ground. Just then a thunderous boom rang out. A white snow toad nearly 100 zhang in size suddenly kicked off with both legs from the far side of a corpse mountain. It leapt up into the air and charged into the battlefield above. Opening its mouth, it spat out a spiraling storm of extreme cold that surged toward Shi Chuankong. Shi Chuankong had just forced back the attack of the three-headed demonic vulture, and had no time to defend himself. He was immediately swept into the storm. In almost an instant, his body was frozen beneath a layer of white ice crystals, and he plummeted toward the ground. Not good, Taoist Xie thought, immediately flashing toward the place where Shi Chuankong was falling. These demon beasts had launched their ambush even earlier than he had expected. On both corpse mountains, huge demon beasts began appearing one after another. Every one of them possessed an aura above the early golden immortal stage, and the strongest among them, a 100-eyed centipede, had even reached the late golden immortal stage. If such a swarm of beasts had appeared under normal circumstances, Shi Chuankong and Taoist Xie together would naturally not have feared them. but they had already been fighting against wave after wave of demon beasts for more than 3 consecutive months. The scale of their exhaustion was unimaginable. Escaping now would not be difficult. But if they continued to resist stubbornly, the outcome would truly be far from optimistic. At that moment, a long breath sounded from within the blood lake. More precisely, it came from within the snow-white lotus petals. Immediately afterward, it was as though someone who had just woken up let out a yawn. The sound should have been as faint as a mosquito's buzz, yet through the waves of spiritual power spreading from the lotus petals, it became so clear that it seemed to resound directly within Dao Xie's heart. In the blood lake on the other side, Shi Chuankong, still sealed within a piece of white ice crystal, let out a breath as though a great burden had been lifted. He sighed softly and said, "Brotherly, you have finally awakened." The next moment, it was as if dark clouds had suddenly parted and heavenly light had burst forth. A snow-bright radiance shot into the sky from the blood lake. From within the suddenly blooming white lotus bud, a human figure soared upward like a white rainbow piercing the sun, streaking across the heavens. Only after flying 10,000 zhang high did he come to a stop. A dazzling white light shone all around him, making it impossible to look directly at him. When Dao Xie saw the figure, their minds connected, and he immediately stopped moving. The ferocious demon beasts were also shocked by the powerful aura that had suddenly appeared. For a moment, they all stopped at the same time and raised their heads to look upward. High in the sky, the dazzling white light gradually withdrew, revealing Han Li's figure. At this moment he had already changed into a white robe. His face was covered by the reincarnation palace mask, and his skin gleamed like jade. His entire person carried the graceful and handsome bearing of an immortal. This strange change had not been caused by any technique applied to his appearance. Rather, it came from the aura radiating from inside his body outward. The Han Li before them seemed completely renewed, giving off an indescribably transcendent presence. However, Han Li himself did not particularly like this aura. Green light swept over his body, and he returned to his original appearance. Only because he had just broken through. The immortal spiritual power fluctuations of the Tai Jade immortal stage around him could not be suppressed for the time being. His gaze swept over the surrounding scene, and his heart stirred slightly. Green light flashed around him and 3 azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords emerged, hovering by his side and slowly rotating. The sword bodies trembled faintly. Thin strands of golden lightning continuously leapt from the sword tips, stirring up tiny golden sparks. The lightning law power contained within them was already on the verge of breaking free, eager to be released to its heart's content. Han Li raised 2 fingers and waved them lightly, softly uttering one word. "Go!" A sharp crackle rang out. 3 streaks of golden lightning flashed violently, leaving behind a scorched aura in midair before vanishing. In the next instant, the 3 fierce beasts flying high in the sky screamed at the same time. Their heads were engulfed by golden lightning and exploded into countless fragments. Their charred corpses then fell toward the ground. The snow toad on the corpse mountain below was the first to sense that something was wrong. It turned and leapt, fleeing madly toward the outside of the valley. Immediately afterward, the other fierce beasts also scattered from the area and fled in terror. Han Li raised an eyebrow, then lifted both fists and punched once in each of 2 directions. 2 massive green fist shadows tore through the air and smashed down. A thunderous explosion erupted. The 2 corpse mountains were struck at the same time by a force weighing tens of thousands of June. The void shook violently. The snow toad that had fled first was firmly caught by the wave of power brought by the fist shadow, then was pressed bit by bit beneath it. Its body burst apart with a bang, blood and flesh spraying everywhere. The remaining fierce beasts could not escape either. One after another their bodies exploded and they died. Even the strongest among them only managed to spit out several blazing fireballs with its innate ability. The fireball struck the fist shadow harmlessly, and in the end it was crushed all the same. Shi Chuankong and Dao Xie had already received Han Li's voice transmission and flown to the distant sky ahead of time, witnessing the entire scene. With nothing more than 2 simple punches, the 2 corpse mountains that had taken the entire valley 3 months to accumulate were flattened in an instant. Even the ground of the valley collapsed along with them, completely transforming into a vast blood lake. The remaining fierce beasts blocked outside the corpse mountains saw that all those powerful beasts had been slain, and that the strange phenomena in heaven and earth had also disappeared. Only then did they scatter in defeat and flee. Han Li flew down and rejoined Shi Chuankong and Daoist Xie. Congratulations, Brother Li. Your cultivation has advanced another step, and you have reached the Tai Jade Immortal stage, Shi Chuankong said with a smile, cupping his fist in congratulations. I suffered under the calamity of baleful decay for so long, and only today have I finally been freed from it. The hardship involved truly cannot be described in words. I remember that you also washed away your baleful qi in the baleful cleansing pool, Brother Shi. Now that you have returned to the Immortal Realm, why did you not, like me, immediately break through after spiritual qi poured back into you? Han Li said with a faint smile. There is something you may not know, Brother Li. When people of my clan break through and advance in rank, the circumstances are still somewhat different from yours. That is why I did not receive the same opportunity as you. It is not strange, Shi Chuankong said vaguely. I see, Han Li said. He did not know whether Shi Chuankong meant the entire demon race or only the race of his own lineage, so he did not probe further. Brother Li, speaking of which, how did you know this place is the Immortal Realm? Shi Chuankong suddenly asked with a strange look in his eyes and a smile on his face. What do you mean, Brother Shi? Is this not the Immortal Realm? Han Li asked in surprise. To tell you the truth, this place is within the Immortal Realm, yet it is not quite the Immortal Realm, Shi Chuankong said mysteriously. Could it be that we have arrived in the Demon Realm? Han Li asked tentatively. That is what you people from the Immortal Realm call it. We prefer to call it the Sacred Realm, Shi Chuankong said with a nod. I have long heard that although the Demon Realm lies within the Immortal Realm, it is an independent domain. I never imagined that we would somehow end up here in such a muddled way, Han Li said, his mind settling as he gave a carefree smile. In truth, I am not entirely sure why we suddenly appeared here either. I only have a rough guess, Shi Chuankong said, his brows furrowing slightly. Was it not you who activated that silver pipa and brought us through the void to escape? Han Li asked with some doubt. How could I have such ability? The only person capable of using cross-realm power to activate the Raksha Pipa and rescue us from the Grey Realm is probably my father, the one you call the Demon Lord, Shi Chuankong said slowly with a bitter smile. When Han Li heard this, it felt as though thunder had exploded in his heart. The Demon Lord? Was he not the one Patriarch Miro had personally gone to the Demon Realm to borrow a treasure from? The one who, as a great encompassment cultivator, had suppressed numerous Dao ancestors and controlled the territory of the demon race? The existence said in legends to be comparable to the Heavenly Court's Dao ancestor of time? And Shi Chuankong, standing before him, was actually the son of that legendary demon lord? At this moment, 10,000 questions rose in Han Li's mind. Yet in the end he asked nothing. After calming down, what puzzled him even more was why Shi Chuankong had chosen to tell him these things. According to my guess, after I refined the Raksha Pipa using my family's secret technique, my father must have sensed it. That was why he could use spatial divine abilities, with the Raksha Pipa as the guide, to bring us back, Shi Chuankong explained after seeing that Han Li remained silent. So that is how it was. Han Li nodded. Just as he was about to say something more, he suddenly remembered something. With a turn of his wrist and a wave of his hand, a silver light gate about a zhang tall appeared beside him. He stepped through it. A trace of doubt flashed in Shi Chuankong's eyes, but he and Daoist Xie entered the light gate one after another. After passing through the gate, the three entered the bamboo building inside the grotto heaven. Han Li immediately saw Taihun lying on the floor inside the building. He hurriedly bent down and lifted her into his arms. With a movement of his spiritual sense, he began examining her body. A moment later, Han Li flipped his hand and took out a golden pill, placing it into Taihun's mouth and helping her swallow it. After the pill entered her abdomen, Taihun remained unconscious, with no visible change. Brother Li, what happened to her? Shi Chuankong asked hesitantly. The injuries on her body are not severe, and her soul has not suffered much damage either. She should not be unconscious like this. I do not know why this is happening, Han Li said with tightly furrowed brows, shaking his head. In that case, why not check whether there is anything unusual in her dantian? Shi Chuankong reminded him. Han Li came to his senses at once and hurriedly examined her. There is not even a trace of origin power in her dantian. This is truly strange, Hanli said in confusion. If so, the problem is most likely there, Shi Chuankong said after thinking briefly. Hanli carefully recalled the scene before they had crossed through space, and his heart chilled slightly. He kept feeling that Taihun's current condition had a great deal to do with the round-wheel divine ability that had suddenly appeared earlier. But whether it truly had been caused by that thing, he could not be certain. Many thanks for your reminder, Brother Shi. Otherwise, I might not have found the cause, Hanli said. Concern brings confusion, that is all. But with her in this state, do you know how to treat her? Shi Chuankong asked. I have never encountered this kind of situation before, so I truly do not know what to do. Do you have any good method, Brother Shi? Hanli asked with a bitter smile. I know nothing about healing methods, but if fellow Taoist Li is willing to return with me to the sacred capital, Night Sun City, perhaps our clan's high priest may have a solution, Shi Chuankong said, shaking his head. Hanli did not answer immediately. He fell into thought. Regardless of whether Brother Li is willing to go, allow me to ask one more question. What are your plans next? Shi Chuankong asked when he saw this. I originally thought we had returned to the Immortal Realm, but unexpectedly we have arrived here. As for what to do next, I will need to think it over carefully, Hanli said with a soft sigh. To tell you the truth, this place is a savage wilderness in the south of our sacred realm, called the 10 Calamities Mountain Range. It received this nickname because 10 vicious beasts with realms comparable to great encompassment cultivators dwell in these mountains, and have long been a source of disaster. Even if you wish to carefully consider your future path, Brother Li, you should do so somewhere else, Shi Chuankong said frankly. 10 vicious beasts at the great encompassment level? That is indeed troublesome. To be honest, fellow Taoist Shi, I am currently completely in the dark. In your opinion, what should we do next? Hanli asked after being startled and thinking for a moment. The fierce beasts here are extremely hostile to outsiders. Ordinary beasts would still be manageable, but if the 10 leaders discover our existence, we will truly be in danger. We should head north and leave this place as quickly as possible. At the northernmost end of the 10 Calamities mountain range is a city called Xiongju City. It is an important pass against invasions from fierce beasts, and a great encompassment cultivator is stationed there. Once we reach that place, we will be safe. At that time, whether through the city lord's manor or the Guangyuan Pavilion branch inside the city, we can head to the sacred capital, Night Sun City, as soon as possible, Shi Chuankong said. Hanli thought this over and felt that it made sense, so he nodded in agreement. Since fellow Taoist Li agrees as well, let us set out quickly. Those fierce beasts have retreated for now, but there is no telling when they may come back. This place cannot be considered safe, Shi Chuankong said, his face lighting up with joy, looking somewhat impatient. Fellow Taoist Shi, please wait a moment. Before we leave, there is something I would like to ask. Hanli suddenly called out to stop him. Please speak, fellow Taoist Li, Shi Chuankong said, his eyes flickering slightly. Earlier, when I was breaking through, many thanks for protecting me. However, I am somewhat puzzled. Why did you go to such lengths to help me, fellow Taoist Shi? If you have something to ask of me, you may speak plainly, Hanli said, looking at Shi Chuankong. After spending this period of time with Shi Chuankong, Hanli had gained some understanding of his temperament and way of doing things. For Shi Chuankong to grant him such a favor, he most likely had something to request. Haha, nothing can be hidden from fellow Taoist Li. I do indeed have something to ask. The 10 Calamities mountain range is extremely dangerous, and with my limited strength, I truly have no confidence in leaving safely. Fellow Taoist Li possesses formidable strength, so I hope you can look after me somewhat along the way, Shi Chuankong said, looking a little embarrassed. That is only natural. Since this place is dangerous, we should of course work together and help one another, Hanli said with a nod. Now that he had advanced to the Tai stage, his strength had increased greatly. With the law of time and the many treasures on his person, even if he faced a great encompassment existence, he was confident he could protect himself. Bringing Shi Chuankong along was not a problem. In the worst case, he could simply place him inside the flower branch space. It would not get in the way. Then many thanks, fellow Taoist Li. The Guangyuan Pavilion headquarters happens to be in Night Sun City. At the headquarters, There are spatial gates connected to the various immortal regions of the true Immortal Realm. Once we reach Night Sun City, I will immediately make arrangements to send fellow Taoist Li back to the Black Earth Immortal Region, Shi Chuankong said with great joy. There is no need to hurry with returning to the Black Earth Immortal Region. Once we arrive at the Guangyuan Pavilion headquarters, there is another matter for which I would like to request fellow Taoist Shi's help, Han Li said, rubbing his nose as his eyes flashed. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the demon realm was also quite rich, and it was far away from the heavenly court sphere of influence, making it rather suitable for his cultivation. Therefore, he was not in much of a rush to return to the true immortal realm. Oh? What matter is that? Could it be the matter fellow Taoist Li mentioned that day in the Grey Realm? Shi Chuankong was startled, then seemed to think of something. Correct. I would like to ask fellow Taoist Shi to use Guangyuan Pavilion's intelligence network to help me look for an ascended cultivator. This is an image of her appearance. Han Li waved his hand and took out a blue jade tablet, handing it over. On the jade tablet appeared the figure of a woman in purple robes. Her features were picturesque, and her beauty was peerless. It was Ziling. Could this person be fellow Taoist Li's beloved? She is truly a nation-toppling beauty, Shi Chuankong said admiringly, his eyes brightening as he accepted the jade tablet. Her name is Ziling. She is a sacred race cultivator from a lower realm. She may have already ascended, or she may not have. I must trouble fellow Taoist Shi to help me investigate, Han Li said without confirming or denying anything. If this woman is a sacred race cultivator from a lower realm, then this matter will be much easier. Sacred race cultivators from lower realms all ascend into the sacred realm, and the sacred realm's ascension platform has always been managed by my third brother. The two of us are close, so investigating this will be very easy. As long as this woman has ascended, she can definitely be found, Shi Chuankong said with a confident smile. Then I will have to trouble you, fellow Taoist Shi, Han Li said, feeling relieved. You are too polite, fellow Taoist Li. I already agreed to this matter back in the Grey Realm, and now I still need you to protect me as I leave the 10 Calamities mountain range. If anyone should be asking for help, it should be me, Shi Chuankong said with a smile. The two did not delay any longer. They soon left the flower branch space and carefully headed north. At this very moment, countless tens of thousands of li away from Han Li and Shi Chuankong, there was an enormous mountain range. Perhaps because it contained unique ores, most of the mountain walls were golden yellow. In the central region of the mountain range stood a colossal peak 10,000 zhang tall. The entire giant peak was golden from top to bottom without the slightest flaw. It constantly emitted beams of golden light, making it extremely conspicuous and clearly visible even from hundreds of li away. On the giant peak stood an enormous palace complex. The palaces were tall, exquisite, and magnificently decorated. Everything inside them was also golden, and bright golden light shone everywhere. This palace complex was radiant and majestic, but in addition to its grandeur, it also gave off a somewhat vulgar impression. The 10 Calamities mountain range was vast. Each of the 10 Calamity Kings occupied one region and ruled over an extensive territory. Countless powerful demonic creatures had gathered under their command, making them immensely powerful. Even the demon race outside could do nothing about this place. This was the cave residence of one of the 10 Calamities, King Golden Rhinoceros. The guards and attendants in the palace all wore golden armor or golden garments. Outside the main entrance of one of the outermost halls stood 2 golden armored guards, one on each side of the gate. Both wore thick golden armor, with only half of their faces exposed. This dull gold armor is truly heavy. It presses so hard that one can barely breathe. But if we do not wear it, we will immediately be injured by the crystal gold rays. Standing guard on Golden Peak Mountain really is miserable work, the guard on the left complained, shifting his body. Brother Ba, you have only just arrived here, so naturally you are not used to it yet. You will be fine after some time. Serving here may be difficult, but the pay is far more generous than in other places, the other guard said. Of course. If not for the pay, I would never have come here. Still, King Golden Rhinoceros truly has strange tastes. To think he actually likes this sort of environment, the guard surnamed Ba said, curling his lip. Silence! The other guard immediately interrupted him through voice transmission. What is it? The guard surnamed Ba asked in surprise. King Golden Rhinoceros hates it most when others comment on his preferences. Last time, one of the king's newly taken concubines accidentally said something just like you did. She was immediately sentenced to the sun-scorching punishment, tied to the blazing sun pillar behind the mountain, and roasted alive into charcoal. You must remember never to say such things again, the other guard warned solemnly through voice transmission. Many thanks for your guidance, brother. The guard surnamed Ba was startled and hurriedly thanked him, his eyes glancing around. Only after quite some time had passed without any movement around them did the guard surnamed Ba finally let out a sigh of relief. Deep within the palace complex, inside a magnificent hall, a large man shaped like a ball of flesh lay lazily on a golden recliner, his belly protruding. His eyes were long and narrow, his nose was flat, and his mouth was extremely large. He looked exceptionally ugly. His skin was dark gold, and faint golden patterns could be seen flickering within it. Two maids in golden robes knelt beside him, massaging his body. Both women had human upper bodies and snake tails. Their delicate hands were covered by golden gloves, which flashed with golden light. They were clearly two immortal artifacts. As the two women kneaded with their fingers, the gloves shot out beams of golden light, causing the air nearby to hiss. They pressed and pinched the large man's body. Sweat faintly appeared on both women's foreheads. Clearly, they were using all their strength. Not bad. Right there. A little harder. The ball-like man's long, narrow eyes were half open and half closed, his face full of enjoyment. When the two snake women heard this, they used even more strength. Just then, the ball-like man's brow suddenly lifted. His reclining body sat upright, and a strange light flashed through his narrow eyes. When the two snake women saw this, they stopped. Leave, the ball-like man said, narrowing his eyes and waving his hand. His body was enormous, but his voice was extremely sharp and thin, making one unable to help wanting to laugh. However, the two snake women bowed their heads, showing not the slightest odd expression, and withdrew. The ball-like man waved his hand, and a purple circular disc shot out from his palm. It hovered in midair and spun rapidly. Dazzling purple light radiated from the disc, then condensed into a purple array. The figure of a middle-aged man in purple robes appeared within the array. He looked to be about 37 or 38 years old, with flowing white hair bound beneath a tall crown. He seemed handsome and refined. Between his brows was a faint purple mark that had seeped deep into his skin. It looked like an ancient rune, emitting waves of purple light and appearing extremely mysterious. Well now, if it is not His Highness the First Prince, you should be at your busiest right now, should you not? How do you have the leisure to contact an idle man like me, stuck out here in the wilderness? The ball-like man said with a chuckle. You jest, fellow Taoist golden rhinoceros. I have always greatly admired your cultivation and strength. It is only that I heard you fought a fierce battle with that black weasel some time ago, and damaged some of your vital energy. I feared disturbing your recovery, so I did not send my regards. Now it seems that fellow Taoist golden rhinoceros has fully recovered, which is truly a matter worthy of celebration, the purple-robed man said with a gentle laugh, giving off a feeling as pleasant as a spring breeze. This ball-like man was none other than King Golden Rhinoceros, one of the 10 calamities, a fierce beast king at the great encompassment stage. First Prince, did you contact me this time specifically to mock me? King Golden Rhinoceros's face instantly darkened, so cold it seemed frost could be scraped from it. Do not misunderstand, fellow Taoist Golden Rhinoceros. The reason you suffered a loss in that previous battle was ultimately because your Mara golden body had yet to reach completion. Recently, I happened to obtain several golden essence Tao fruits. Perhaps they may help fellow Taoist Golden Rhinoceros advance further, the purple-robed man said calmly. Golden essence Tao fruits. Is that true? King Golden Rhinoceros abruptly stood up, a scorching light flashing in his eyes as he spoke with urgency. The purple-robed man only smiled without speaking. Your Highness the First Prince, speak plainly. What business do you have with me this time? King Golden Rhinoceros came back to himself and calmly asked. Speaking with intelligent people is always effortless. I would like to ask fellow Taoist Golden Rhinoceros to do one thing for me. Once it is done, the golden essence Tao fruits will belong to you, the purple-robed man said, a trace of killing intent flashing in his eyes. Please say whatever you wish, Your Highness, King Golden Rhinoceros said without hesitation. I want a certain person to disappear from this world forever, the purple-robed man said calmly. Oh? Who? King Golden Rhinoceros did not seem surprised at all. The purple-robed man said nothing. He raised his hand and waved, sending a beam of purple light out from the array. It landed inside the hall and turned into a purple screen of light. Two figures appeared on the screen. One of them had a head of curly white hair and bright, spirited eyes. It was Shi Chuankong. The other was of medium build, with dark skin and an ordinary face. Naturally, it was Han Li. This person. I remember he is. King Golden Rhinoceros's eyes flashed as they landed on Shi Chuankong. As for Han Li, he was automatically ignored. That is correct. He is the 13th Prince Shi Chuankong. Present, he is in your 10 Calamities mountain range. According to my judgment, he happens to be within your Golden Rhinoceros territory. As long as you can bring me his head and the silver peepa on his body, I will give you 2 golden essence Tao fruits, the purple-robed man said slowly. When King Golden Rhinoceros heard this, greed flashed across his face. But immediately afterward, his brows furrowed, and a conflicted look appeared. Your Highness the First Prince, although I am indeed tempted by the golden essence Tao fruits, I have also heard that this Shi Chuankong is rather favored by the Sacred Lord. The Sacred Lord's anger is not something I can bear. You should invite someone more capable for this matter, King Golden Rhinoceros said, shaking his head. Father is currently in seclusion. Moreover, before entering seclusion, he already issued instructions allowing us brothers to decide the matter of succession on our own. Now that I have said this much, fellow Taoist Golden Rhinoceros should understand, correct? The purple-robed man said lightly. Oh? If that is the case, then this can be considered. However, Shi Chuankong also has considerable forces under his command. Killing him will offend quite a few people, King Golden Rhinoceros said slowly. Haha, could the mighty King Golden Rhinoceros be afraid of offending others? The purple-robed young man laughed loudly. There is no need for your highness to provoke me. I do not fall for such tactics. If you want me to act, that is fine. First pay me 2 golden essence Tao fruits as a deposit. After I retrieve that person's head and the peepa you want, you will give me 2 more Tao fruits, King Golden Rhinoceros said with a smile. Golden essence Tao fruits are incredibly precious. Is fellow Taoist Golden Rhinoceros not asking for too much? The purple-robed man's expression did not change, and a smile still hung on his lips, but his tone clearly carried a trace of displeasure. Asking for too much? I do not think so. Though golden essence Tao fruits are precious, compared with what your highness seeks, they are hardly worth mentioning. As far as I know, this 13th brother of yours has always been valued by the Sacred Lord, and is a major threat to you. Using 4 golden essence Tao fruits to remove a great enemy is a very worthwhile trade. And I just happen to be a suitable trading partner, King Golden Rhinoceros said with a crafty smile. 3 at most, and I will give them to you after the matter is done, the purple-robed man said slowly after thinking briefly. 1 fruit in advance. Without receiving any benefit first, I, Golden Rhinoceros, will absolutely not act, King Golden Rhinoceros said firmly, shaking his head. Very well. However, if you fail to complete this matter, not only must you return this golden essence Tao fruit, you must also pay some interest. Also, the person beside him should already have early Tai stage cultivation, the purple-robed young man said with a nod. That Shi Chuankong is said to be merely a golden immortal. Even if he has an early Tai stage helper, if I personally take action, how could I possibly fail? Your Highness may prepare the fruits and await my good news, King Golden Rhinoceros said, bursting into loud laughter as though he had heard something extremely amusing. Then I will await fellow Taoist Golden Rhinoceros's good news, the purple-robed man said. He made a hand seal and waved, and his figure vanished with a blur. However, the light emitted by the purple circular disc did not disappear. Instead, it became even brighter, and countless silver runes shot out from it, rapidly forming a silver array. A humming sound rang out. The silver array suddenly shone brilliantly, and countless silver rays surged out from within. Then golden light flashed at the center of the array, and a fist-sized golden fruit appeared. The round fruit had patches of golden markings the size of fingernails across its surface. Threads of golden light flickered over it. It looked extraordinary and emitted surging metal attribute law fluctuations. King Golden Rhinoceros's eyes lit up. He immediately took the golden fruit and examined it carefully for a moment, a trace of joy appearing on his face. Someone call Taiyu over. King Golden Rhinoceros called out loudly. At the same time, he carefully placed the golden essence Dao fruit into a jade box, pasted several talismans onto it, and put it away. Yes. A golden-clad attendant appeared outside the hall and answered. He then transformed into a streak of golden light and flew into the distance. A short while later, a dark green ray of light shot over from afar and landed outside the hall, revealing the figure of a short man in green robes. This person's skin was all an eerie green. He was only 5 feet tall and looked like an undergrown youth, with a baby-faced appearance. However, his body was extremely sturdy, with muscles piled upon muscles, giving his entire person a very mismatched impression. Lord Taiyu. When the guards outside the hall saw who had arrived, a trace of fear flashed in their eyes, and they immediately bowed respectfully. Taiyu did not even look at the guards outside the gate. He walked straight into the hall. Greetings, my king, the short man said in an extremely respectful manner as he prostrated himself on the ground. His voice was also very rough. Taiyu, you have come. I have told you before that you, Tongyu, and you need not kneel when you see me. Get up quickly, King Golden Rhinoceros said gently, standing up and personally helping Taiyu to his feet. You are the king, and we are your subordinates. Kneeling in respect is only right and proper, Taiyu said respectfully. Do as you wish, King Golden Rhinoceros sighed. May I ask why my king has summoned me? Taiyu asked. Take people to search the territory. Find this person and bring back his head and everything on his body. King Golden Rhinoceros flicked his finger, and the screen showing Shi Chuankong and Han Li flew out, stopping in front of the short man. He pointed at Shi Chuankong and gave the order. An outsider? A cold light flashed in the short man's eyes as he spoke in an icy voice. That is right. Taiyu, I know you hate outsiders. I do not care what happens to the rest of his body, but his head must be brought back intact, King Golden Rhinoceros warned. Rest assured, my king. This subordinate understands, Taiyu said, a fierce light flashing in his eyes as he nodded. This person's cultivation is at the peak of the Golden Immortal stage. The person beside him should be his guard. With early Tai stage cultivation, I permit you to mobilize all manpower in Golden Rhinoceros territory. You must do this as quickly as possible, King Golden Rhinoceros continued, though he did not reveal Shi Chuankong's identity. Rest assured, my king. Within 1 month, this subordinate will definitely bring back his head, Taiyu answered proudly. Go. King Golden Rhinoceros said nothing more. Taiyu bowed again, turned and left the hall. Soon he transformed into a streak of green light and flew into the distance. With my status, how could I personally act against a mere golden immortal? If those old fellows found out, would they not laugh at me for bullying the weak? King Golden Rhinoceros said disdainfully as he watched Taiyu fly away.